Good morning, everyone. My name is Joel Vasquez. I'm part of the Software One marketing team. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar session with our expert, Voldy Romson. If you have any questions, please share them on the chat. Before kicking off the session, I would like to welcome you all to our technology and business blog, where you will find articles on recommendations or services and trends in technologies. I will be sharing the link on the chat briefly. Also, I want to invite you all to our social media channels, where you can find us as Software One and Software One West Indies in Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. At the end of the session, I will be sending by email a short survey. For us, it's extremely important to know your feedback to continuously improve in this practice. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Voldy, you can continue.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Voldy Ransom, Solutions Specialist at Software One. Lyndon, I'm seeing you're the only one here, so I guess we'll have a very, small audience, but which will be good for you, So what I'm going to go through here is basically from a high level things that you need to consider when you consider moving into the cloud, and also these building blocks that you would need to consider and put in place in order to have a solid secure cloud experience. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now, and then we'll start the presentation. All right.
Thank you.
Right. All right, so as I said before, my name is Voldy Ransom, from Software One. I am at Software One over 2 years. I am in the IT industry going into almost 20-something years. So my role right now at Software One is focused on cloud technology and helping customers adopt it the right way. So this morning, what we will go through is some Cloud 101, and basically these are the building blocks for having a successful cloud experience for any customer that thinking about moving into the cloud. As you know, the cloud business is exploding. A lot of people are trying to utilize the cloud, and with the ease of use, implementing a environment is very easy, but all the things that comes around it as relates to security and governance and visibility must be taken into consideration. So with the ease of using cloud, there's also the problem arising of okay, are we using it the right way, because it's so quick and easy to do. All right. I'll go through this now. This is the cloud service model. And as you know, there are different types of services that you can get into the cloud, right? If you look at your entire infrastructure, you will have different components. You will have storage, networking, compute. You'll have virtual machines, OS runtimes for your applications, and also your data access, all right? So from a traditional sense, a legacy sense, this is what you would have in your environment. And now you're considering moving into the cloud. So these are the different types of services that you can consume in the cloud. Infrastructure as a service. This is the traditional type of service you can get in a cloud, where the host just provides compute, networking, and storage. You, on top of that, you will provide you can, provision your VMs, your OS, your runtime, and your applications and data access. All right. In this model, you have control from the virtual go up to data access. So in certain scenarios, this may be the best approach, but it all depends on your needs and your scenarios. All right. So you can move on to platform as a service, which you will provide the computer network and virtual machine OS system and runtime. So at this point, you will only have to implement your application and your data access, your data and your access. So you're going up higher up into the scale. Therefore, the cloud provider would now be in control or have a blend of control over the elements from the storage and runtime. So things to take into consideration if it is that you have a need to have more control over your environment, then you may not have to look at infrastructure as a service. If not, you can look at a platform as a service. So then you can move on to software as a service, which is the provider would provide from the storage straight to the application, and all you doing is consuming, right? So all these elements have to be analyzed from the perspective of your needs. So for instance, if it is that you have a legacy application that needs to run on with certain parameters, then the analysis will have to be done if it's suited for a platform as a service or infrastructure as a service. The shared responsibility model or matrix kind of gives you a high level idea of what you would have control over depending on what service you choose. So if you go on-premise, then you'll have more control over your own environment. This is a traditional way of implementing IT infrastructure and technology. Infrastructure as a service, there is where you would be hosting the infrastructure, more or less the hardware, and the physical element will definitely belong to you, but everything else going up will be a blend from the hosting infrastructure, the network controls, because you will need to access the VMs or the infrastructure, and you would need some sort of networking. But everything else here would be your responsibility to take care of. Would be, sorry, the cloud responsibility, the cloud provider responsibility to take care of. Same thing with the platform as a service. The higher you go up the chain is where your responsibility would be more, and lower you will have the cloud provider providing that service for you. So, you know, the key here, or the idea here is knowing these information and taking it into consideration when you are making a decision on what goes into the cloud. And doing a cloud discovery and a cloud analysis is key in starting your journey on the cloud. Even before you consider what vendor you go with, you know, you have to be able to facilitate and understand the type of workload you have and how it works well in the cloud. So this is just a small snapshot of what's available, and this may be dated. So as I was speaking before, this platform as a service comprised of all these different components that you can use to replace traditional legacy type functions within your environment. And it also provides the ability to take advantage of some of the new technology. So for instance, AI and Internet of Things are new type of technology that are being utilized to bring business value to customers. So what Microsoft and the cloud provider has done is provide a service type where you can utilize the service based on consumption. So we have platform as a service, and then we have management. Management is also key because you want to know what's happening in your environment. So Azure Monitor, it's a native monitoring orchestrator within Azure that you can utilize to interact with different types of services to see what's happening in your environment. And then we have security. Security starts with identity also. So you have Security Center, which is inside a native tool inside of Azure that has two delivery model or two tiers. One is basic and the next is standard. With standard, you now will be able to do a lot more of security, access to more security features within your environment. And if you have a hybrid type environment, which you're utilizing cloud and on-premise, it also has features to integrate with that. And then these are the basic infrastructure as a service where you can run up a VM, Windows, Linux, you have access to storage. These are the basic elements of networking components within Azure. And then all of that sits on Azure Data Center in the States or wherever the data center is around the world. So I'm just going to go through a little more detail on, why you want to use cloud. So we're talking about the benefits of using cloud, cost optimization. And cost optimization is really about using the fundamental base is using what you consume. So if it is that you are in charge of doing a budget or doing an upgrade, there's two ways you can look at it. You can do capital expenditure in which you invest in hardware infrastructure and you cater for growth for the next 3 years. Another option would be use what you consume. So you move to the cloud and you just use what you're consuming. Bear in mind, this is without proper management here. When you move to the cloud, you may not see the amount of cost benefits that you want. So moving to the cloud is one, but optimizing and continue optimizing and using the type of features in the cloud to really take that cost optimization feature moving to the cloud. You really need to have that continued optimization and looking at your environment to see what's happening. Right. So as I said before, total cost of ownership would be higher on if it is that you're building something in an infrastructure, whereas in CapEx, because of capital expenditure. And these are the items here that you would now have to face if you decide that you want to build out an infrastructure. Some of the benefits is right sizing, which means you use you provision what you use. Just in time capacity, you would now be able to spin up a VM or burst into the cloud, or you can containerize your application and then scale up when you need based on demand. All right, so these are some of the key elements that you would benefit moving into the cloud. But as I said before, knowing how your cloud environment is set up and knowing your application and doing a proper analysis is key to really reap the true benefits of this. Right, so we're talking about if you have an infrastructure and you want to modernize it, and these are some of the issues that you would be facing right now with an aged data center. And these are some of the benefits: economy of scale, the latest and the greatest. This is something here. This is very key because one thing is having the latest and the greatest at your fingertip, but it's how are you being able to access it and use it and optimize it for your benefit. And that is what we find happening a lot with cloud, with customers in their cloud journey. They get on the journey. There's a bunch of features that will help them achieve their business objective, but it's just the knowledge and the expertise to know that, okay, this is how I can look at my application. And this is another big pointer for it. So if you have your own data center, therefore, you would be in charge of your security posture. And if you really want to be secure and it's being driven by the business, it can be pretty expensive to be regulatory compliant with these standards, because you will have to invest heavily in the physical infrastructure. Then you will have to invest heavily in the controls of who gets into your data center, and then you have to invest heavily in your logical security. All right. With cloud technology, it's based on Microsoft data centers, which, because of scale, they are able to now adhere to a higher level of compliancy within their data center. And you can now pull up or have the information concerning, what compliance rating is my data in, and, how does it align to industry best practice. Of course, this is something that we talk about all the time. You know, having IT focus on business value is something key, and there's where it all ties back to the business driver. What is needed to drive your business forward? IT will now be able to focus on really generating business value based on what is needed, and don't have to worry about a hard drive going bad or a server going down. What they will have to focus on is, what do we need to innovate and move forward with this business. So for instance, if you have a legacy application that you use within your business, within that legacy application, they would have multiple tiers of activities, right? And if you have to innovate or make a change, you have to go through that whole code change with that legacy legacy application. With cloud technology, you can separate the different activities of that very same whole, right? Multiple actions that needs to happen, and work on individual components of it, which will now give you a faster turnaround time on a specific task within that application, which is really a game changer. So using agile type approach, where you'll be able to run sprints to add features quickly, so that you can roll out into your customer very quickly, based on market demands, based on environmental type issues that you may have. Then we're talking about reliability, of course. Reliability is really talking about how reliable your data center is from the perspective of the basic fundamentals of power, cooling, and security. And really and truly, if you want to build out a data center to tier 4, tier 5, it takes a lot of money. With cloud technology, you can have fabric redundancy with resources that has been provisioned. It's to provide a robust architect. Basically, you can feel over your data or your VMs region to region. And then you have proactive monitoring, which you can see what's happening in your environment, and predictive maintenance. All these things are managed for you within the cloud. And these are the things that you will not have to worry about when you're moving into the cloud. As I keep saying, optimizing and utilizing new features continually is what would be the main focus of a cloud, of IT in a cloud world, is really utilizing the technology to make a business difference. Right. So availability talks around the same type of targets, as it relates to how available is your services, as it relates to on-premise, and in cloud. In cloud, you have a higher potential to boost and availability, as in, I need more computing power, I need more storage. This could happen very quickly in the cloud. Here might be a little bit slower or a lot slower and expensive. And here is you can also will identify your SLAs that relates to availability. Right. Well, we all know there is a limited amount of resources on premise, and in cloud, it's a whole lot different as you can scale up as needed. The sweet spot, what is happening now? We have a hybrid type scenario where we have both on-premise and cloud resources, and most customers on their journey starts off with this type of a arrangement where you have the two operating within the environment and taking advantage of both worlds. As I spoke before, the ability to respond fast is what you get with the cloud. This is especially from the perspective of DevOps. If you're doing a lot of development, orchestrating workflows, rapid services. So really and truly, the old way of developing applications and using and how you roll out is slowly moving away, and these are they are moving into more package type scenarios where you can strip away your application and create a box for a certain activity, and if you need to amend it, or if you need to add a feature, that can be done very quickly because it's separate from the whole, and the tools are there in the workflow in which you can utilize to do it quickly. Right. So this is another issue. Now, it doesn't says it's not a reality that when you move into the cloud, management becomes easier. No, it doesn't become easier. These same issues, especially the shadow IT, because it's so easy to run up a VM, is still issues that you would have to face if you have not set up your environment correctly with your governance, right? You will all this simplified management, that's a benefit. Centralized tool, that's a benefit. Straightforward control, that's a benefit, right? Managed service options, but shadow IT is something that you would have to be mindful of in here also, and also server crawl or sprawl. That is something that you will have to look at. So that's why, I always tell customers moving into the cloud, make sure you have a good foundation from best practices, from security to governance. And recoverability, there is where you now have to talk about your RTOs and your RPOs. What is your recovery time objectives and what is your recovery point objective? So with the cloud, they specify how your data is back up, when it's back up, depending of the tier infrastructure you choose. They will let you know, well, this is backed up every hour, therefore the data for this will be available with if it is that something were to go wrong with Azure, which is rarely, from a technical perspective, the data would be available an hour back. All right. So I'm going to talk about how do you access it? How do I get Azure? How do I push it? How do I consume? All right. So there's 4 ways you can get it. This is the traditional way where you have a EA or SC or MCA. This is with Microsoft Direct. So these here are where you work with a partner. And you work with a partner for this one also, but this is here, this CSP is a partner-led engagement. So what will happen is that we will provide additional services on top of the CSP in this model here. This would be straight with Microsoft. Indirect, it could be direct or indirect, and you get Microsoft services. With a CSP arrangement or agreement, providers can provide additional services as relates to enhance the customer experience. So for software one, we provide something called Azure Simple, and Azure Simple is Azure, but with additional services as things like discovery, analysis of your environment, total cost of ownership reports. We also, within that package, we provide support. We also provide our per-cloud tool for visibility and cost control. And we also provide migration services. And it's depending on where you are in your journey, we'll provide a package to get you on the cloud with best practice and governance. Pay as you go, you can access this through your credit card most of the times. This is really used for individuals who want to explore Azure a little bit more and do some experiments and be managed by their credit card and the cost. So these are the type of the billing models that you would have with each package. All right. So EAs are direct with Microsoft or really for enterprise customers. You have to put a mandatory commit of 12,000 US. This is a contract with Microsoft standard support, MS telesales, right? And then the CSP is what I was talking about, which is a partner sole contract. Partner also support individual billing separate. Yeah. And then you have your pay as you go requires a credit card. Billing without credit card possible, support calls. Right. So every resource that you provision in Microsoft are monitored. Some has a costed and some doesn't. So everything goes into from the perspective of consumption, what you've consumed, usage, and against your contract, and that is what will produce your invoice or your bill. Right. So if you spin up a VM, that particular VM will have a cost attached to it. And if you utilize it, then it will actually you'll actually be billed on it, right? That's why it's very important to have continual optimization where you can identify a server that is not being used in the nighttime and shut it down so you save money there, or identify a server that is being used for testing but it's over spec, so therefore you can resize it and save additional monies there. So cloud governance, right? So cloud governance is an interesting topic. This is how you control your environment and also how it can affect your costs. So each Azure provision or entity or subscription has a Azure AD tied to it. So it's tied to identity. And that is what gives the top level type governance scenario within Azure. All right. And it's tied to the subscription, be it Microsoft Intune, Office 365. It's all tied to a single organization and tied to AD tenant. So this is a high level of Azure Active Directory identity, where you have in the middle of it all is Microsoft Azure Active Directory. And then you will have different components where it will provide like AD Connect. So if you want to sync users from your on-premise into the cloud, or you want to do seamless sign-on, you can do that through the services of Azure and Azure Active Directory. So these are different scenarios that you will have within your environment in order to manage and access your resources. All right. So foundational accounts This is where you look at, okay, who has access and who has control and what do they have access to, right? So if you have a enterprise enterprise portal or EA, what you will get is access to the enterprise portal. Within the access to the enterprise portal, you would now be able to, there'll be two roles, and then you will now be able to provision subscription and manage at a core layer. So at this point, at that point now, you can start to do your governance. If you are a company that has multiple entities, regionally or locally, but you have multiple entities, you can assign each one of them a subscription, right? And with that subscription is where you can now separate costing, separate access at a logical level, right? So you have that at the top. So if you have manufacturing and you have HR separate from that perspective, they can have a separate subscription, and and they can do their management from that perspective. So once they have their subscription, it will go to the Azure portal, right? The Azure portal is where you can actually provision resources on that set subscription, right? So if you have HR, they would now be able to deliver to provision resources on that portal. And then they also have, see, the two high level roles: owner account, and you have service admin. So these are some of the rights they would have, or the roles or access they would have within the Azure portal. They would not have access to the EA portal. All right. So here is where best practice starts. Here is where you start to build out your governance. So this is a typical type organization and how you can start with your governance. You start with enrollment. Enrollment is part of the enterprise portal where you could do the departments there, and you can set up your accounts and align it to different departments, or align it to different regions, or you can align it to different, if it's the engineering department, you can align it to different projects, right? Then you can add your subscription to the different elements within that within the organization. Once you add subscriptions into the let's say a project, let's say you add a subscription within a project, then you assign roles within the subscription that are able to create, delete, or amend anything inside of the subscription, right? Also, within the subscription, that means you would be in Azure portal. You can also define resource groupings and which resource group or region you would use. And then you could even go further and define the websites that, or let's say website server or web apps or VMs that could be created. So it's a top, it starts from the Azure Enterprise and you come straight down. But always remember that it starts from the top, where you start to define from an enterprise portal perspective straight down to the resource of what you want to be provisioned in your organization and how you can get control over it. Right? So data center. So this is a high level view of the Microsoft data centers and how it's provisioned, right? So you have availability zones. Availability zones are one region. This is one region. And then within that region, you have 3 data centers, right? So this is availability zone. If you provision something here, then it will be copied here and here, right? Now, if this zone has issues and goes down, then what do? Then there is a region, a redundant region, which you can fail over to. And it's that this is definitely part of the features that you would have access to if you want. If you have a critical service that can't afford to be done, then you do the availability zones, and then you do a geo-redundant, which means that your information is now being replicated to the next region. Right. This is just a high-level view of Microsoft data center and some of the securities that they have behind it. So barrier fencing, so it starts from the perimeter, then the building, where you will actually have the racks and servers and stuff. There's a security operating center there. There is 24/7 security staff, days of backup power. So here's where you're talking about, you do resiliency and the availability. And if you were to now think to build this out within your data center, it may cost a lot of money to really have everything covered. And then after the server room or computer room is camera alarmed, and then you have your two-factor biometrics access to the physical infrastructure. Right. So we're getting a little deeper into it now. We're talking about, well, then how do they provide all these VMs and servers? They use the very tight and hardened version of a hypervisor, Hyper-V, and that is how they actually, provision the whole data center scenario within the actual rack itself. So all these things here are provisioned once this infrastructure as a service is provisioned with Hyper-V, which is Microsoft virtualization solution. Right. So we're talking about here the network protection. So there is something called a VNet, or is a logical type separation that you create on your subscription when you started to deploy within your organization, right? And then within that, there's customer one could be able to create subnets within his provision software, and that is how everything is separated. You can also have isolated networks where you provision from bare metal server infrastructure, which you will pay for. So basically, it's more or less it's type of, you have access to the hardware and you're not sharing anything with anybody. But of course, that will be at a different cost. And then how you access it, you can do the RDP, you can do SSH for the Linux deployment. You connect to, this is just one example of how you can connect to the cloud, but there's express route depending on your needs. If you need a faster link, you can use express route, but mainly most customers use the VPN and it works fine for a region. So we will talk a little bit about management groups. Management groups is one of the key fundamental building blocks for governance. So a management group is where you can group together different entities. You can have HR, you can have IT and marketing, right? And then to service those groups, you can now assign a subscription from the enterprise portal, right? So with this subscription, that they would know the apps will be consumed, the HR will consume the apps to that group, right? So everything would be separate where you can tag properly and make sure that the policies or the groups are adhering to. So with groups now, you can assign policies to it. So you can say for the HR management group, no VMs allowed over a certain size. So you can see where we're starting to build out the governance, and that is how you manage it. You manage it from the distribute from the top layer, which is the enterprise portal, and then you come down and you separate it based on groups, and then within that groups now you apply a policy within the groups, right? And once you apply the policy in the groups, you can still go down further depending on what is the policy, and also defined, who has access to the resources that was created. Right. So this is how, from a subscription level, how you can manage it. You can do it from a function, which is IT finance. You can do the separation, business division. You can do it that way, or geographic. Where are you? And then you can assign the subscription from that perspective. Right. So I'm going to go into a little bit about the actual configuring and using Azure. So the fundamental bucket is something called a resource group, right? You can create several resource group under subscription. So if you have a project, you can create all the resources within that group and tag it with that group. So therefore, you're starting now put some structure around how you're deploying it. All right, so you know that it could be resource group name HR, and everything that the HR app is consuming, storage, servers, a tag, a part of the tag for that, or the naming convention would be HR, and all of those are in one group. All right, this is another view of it. So while we're doing all this, we still have Azure AD managing our identity, the rule-based access, in which you now would be able to assign different owners or different roles within within your organization or within your resource groups. All right. So you can assign from here, from the perspective, you could assign roles, and then you could assign the contributor owner readers to your the resource group, and then the actual resources you can also assign these to the actual resources. So it's pretty flexible like that. This is how you manage and govern your environment to make sure that from a security perspective and cost perspective, you have full visibility and you have no surprises. Remember, I was talking about the policies. This is what I was talking about. So the Azure policies now can be applied to a group, and where you now will be able to monitor and make sure that the policies are being adhered to, and if there's any policy violations as it relates to the from an audit perspective, because there is an audit feature within the Azure policies that you can use to monitor the environment. Right. There's also a feature called lock, where you can create a resource group or a resource, and if you have ownership, you can lock it so that no one can access it other than you, or if you give somebody permissions to delete it. That is the way you apply some governance and some control within the environment when you have multiple people accessing the resources. Right. Part of governance is also tagging. Tagging is where if you create a VM, what is the name of the VM? So you can create the name of the VM, but you can tag it to a group or a resource or resource group. So you say always tag, you can tag owner, department, and environment. There are best practice recommendations for tagging, which you can see on the screen right now. So you have the subscription group, virtual machine storage, NIC, public IP address. NSG is network security group, which is a fundamental type rule base which you can edit to provide some security for your networking and access to your VMs. All right. So there are naming conventions or naming patterns that you should adhere to for best practice. Right. Azure Blueprint is another way to govern. This is something like infrastructure as a code. This is where you can take a file, a JSON file, which is really the instructions to deploy a VM. So when you say create a VM, it spins it up, it pulls the file, and it spins it up to specification. So if you choose, I want a VM with Windows 2000 on it, or 2009, I wanted this, I want this storage, that, whatever, it actually writes a file and spins it up for you. So the blueprint now is where you can take that and apply it to subscription groups. So when subscription A wants to create a storage or a VM, it can use the blueprint that allows him to create it and nothing else. You can also customize the blueprint with different security measures or hardening, so that when you deploy in a 2009, it's deploying this consistently, and there is no change. It improves the speed, how you can speed up your deployment and know that it's being deployed with best practice and governance. Right, so Azure governance capabilities. These are it in a nutshell. So you have your policies, your blueprints, your graphic, your resource graphic. Resource graphic is really kind of dashboard where you are able to review your consumption via graphics in detail and see what's happening. So it gives you visibility. Here is where you can define your organization. This is more for control, governance, and then you have your monitor for cost spend and optimization. Right. So this is another view of the architect from the perspective of governance, where you define your policy, you use that, you use your role-based access, and then you use the ARM template. Here is where the ARM template is where you deploy and you could have control over what is being deployed. This is done, it could be done by the Azure portal. There's also a command line tool, Cloud Shell, and you can also use third party to deploy. Right, and this is the policy engine that lays on that works together with everything. I was talking about SLAs and stuff like that. So this is just an example of the different tiers you might be able to access within Azure, depending on your business needs. All right. So premium might be 8 gigs of RAM, 6 cores with a SSD backend. So you would be able to define these criteria based on your business criteria or your business needs as you go along. All right. So it's set up where you can choose and pick based on what you need. And then these are the availability, the SLA availability from the perspective of uptime and downtime. Depending on what services you choose, you would be able to access the availability. And this is the downtime per month. You can further increase your uptime by tailoring a solution to increase your availability based on how you configure your VM. So you can use Azure Site Recovery, or you can use replication, within the solution to make sure that that your VM is available. When you're spinning up, you can do load balancing between VMs. If one goes down, the next one. So you can increase these numbers depending on your solution or the business drivers. This is recoverability. This is more like, where you'll get how fast you'll be able to get your backup, or how fast you'll be able to get your service backup. I think that is it. I know it's a lot to digest, but any questions?
Yes, Wally, it is a lot.
Yes.
Especially as we got to the second half, or maybe I should say the final third of the
Yes.
presentation.
Yes.
So it's been a lot. I mean, it's something that I've always kept in the back of my mind. I mean, we do everything in terms of our data center on premise. I mean, we have some services that we access via the cloud.
Mhm.
Actually, we got those through Software One,
Okay.
Microsoft services.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but I mean, I would say in the medium term, we'd probably look at, possibility of a hybrid
Mhm.
um, setup, and
Mhm.
down the road looking at just moving to the cloud, um,
Mhm. Mhm.
if we get to that stage.
Mhm.
Uh,
All right.
but I mean, the presentation was good. It gave me a good overview of the whole
Mhm.
Azure service and how Software
Mhm.
One can
Mhm.
build on top of that
Mhm.
service, to make it, I guess, a little more manageable and
Mhm.
for IT.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Especially, I mean, when you start looking at the cost,
Yes.
and being able to manage the cost and
Yes. Yes.
resources.
Yes.
Um, these are always things that you, for the first time, IT team, you're always a bit apprehensive where those are concerned.
Yes. 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 The good thing about this is that um as I keep saying, repeating it before, it's really about what is the business need, and the only way we can really make a sensible decision based on cost, business needs, and other factors is really doing a proper fact-finding analysis of your current environment.
Right,
And that is what I always even say to anything. Let's see what's in your environment, and see what if there's blockers. See, do cost optimization. Believe it or not, we did we had a customer where we delivered a advisory, and because of we do it through CSP, and it's free, so you get advisory services for up to 50 servers for free. And this financial institution had a critical server, but when the IT department was saying, the server is ready to fall down, or it need more resources. But when we did the analysis, we found that most of the servers were overspec'd. So moving into to the cloud or shifting, you have to take that into consideration, where you can do right sizing, um,
right,
and they were able to save some money there. And I mean, infrastructure as a service is just the first step in getting into the cloud. When we started to talk about application modernization, where you introduce more features, where you can actually get in and have more control over your application development life cycle, as in this is what I can do, you can turn around faster. So it's really a starting from the basic, where you
right,
analyze your environment, and you do the homework, because sometimes you have an application that may work better. When you do the cost optimization, when you do the cost analysis, you realize that this application um, could work within your on-premise for a time, and then we can look to see how we can modernize it. you know so it's really starting the discussion around what you have, and how cloud technology could help you. Anytime you start just pushing things in the cloud, it's not really a good idea. It's not really a good
okay,
idea. Yeah, yeah. So
understood.
what we can probably do, I mean, who would be your BDM, Lyndon?
When
Who
you
you
say
talk
BDM,
Well, business development management. Who's your account person that you speak to in Software One? Who's the point of contact?
um, look, I've just forgotten the name. Patrice,
Patrice.
Patrice,
Okay. All right. Okay.
yes.
All right. So I'll follow up with Patrice,
Hmm.
and then we could reach out to you, and we could start. I mean, we could do a basic, and it will be at no cost to you, a basic analysis, and see
Okay,
what you have, and you can with that analysis, you will get reports where you can go with factual evidence and show your upper management and the team, hey, this is what we have, this is what we can do, really based on information, and not saying, well, yeah, because the cloud is the buzzword now, let's move into the cloud. All right.
right.
Yeah,
It makes sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's how we can take it forward.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so
So Joe, go ahead.
no, so I just want to say thank you for the presentation. I mean, very informative.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Azure I mean, as you rightfully say, it is changing all the time. Those
Yes.
services that are being provided by Microsoft. So it's always good to know that there's somebody that we're already used to that we can start that journey on
Definitely.
once
Yeah.
we've decided to.
Definitely. So we are there. Anytime you're ready, just reach out to Patrice, and we will take it and have that discussion. All right.
Okay. Thank you, Wally.
All
Thank
right.
you,
No
Joel.
problem. All right, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
You
You
too.
too. Okay,
Bye
bye-bye.
bye.